Dominic Angel.
And I'm Ricky Macias.
And together we are Un Poquito Podcast.
Oh,
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Good.
Un Poquito Podcast, exploring Latino culture little by little.
Hell yeah. I'm excited. Thanks everybody for being here today. We have an exciting episode for you. Exciting guest, LA native, queen of punk, one of my favorite live performances to see. Please everybody welcome Drew from Trap Girl.
Hello.
Blah, 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 blah.
What's going on?
I'm honestly Trap Girl, one of my favorite punk bands for a super long time. You know, I started in DIY in like 2012, and I think you had already been around. How long has the band been around?
We're going on 9 years. 9 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, yeah, it was about the same time. Yeah. Then when I got involved at like Bridgetown DIY and like Pomona, the Pomona scene, you were popping up. And I remember because I used to book shows. And my friend from math, Josh Lopez, I reached out to him to be like, do you know any Latina punk bands that I can book? And he was like, Trap Girl, dog. Yeah, and you've had like it's been a kind of a journey for you, huh?
It's been a journey, yes.
So how did for the people that don't know, what is the story of Trap Girl? Like, how did you guys start?
Well, Trap Girl started in 2014. I was a folk musician before that, and
that's honestly very surprising to me.
Yeah,
I like would never have guessed.
Yeah,
that.
I was in a folk band called the Glitter Path.
But folks kind of has punk origins, right? In a way.
Sure,
There's a crossover like Woody
like the punk
Guthrie,
of country.
Johnny Cash.
there's definitely stuff in there, but. I believed a lot in that project, and I loved the songs that I wrote for it. And it was funny because we would do like open mics, right? Where like we would do a song, and I'll be like, "Thank you," and like nobody would clap. So that was like our only shows were open mics for 4 years, and I was like 21, 22, and I didn't know. I was like, I need to change something, you know. I was like, I need to do something. I was so frustrated with my music and not getting a response and nobody really caring that I was like, what would be something where I can get a response? And then I watched a documentary. I watched a few documentaries that influenced me. One of them was Hatred, Gigi Allen documentary. Oh. And I was like, he is just wild and crazy, you know? And he's a piece of shit. But I was like, he's so wild. And I was like, to have like a little bit of that, to add a little bit of that into my music and to be fast and to be crazy, that would kind of sounds like a great recipe to me, you know, like to be shocking and be crazy. And you know, I knew how to write songs. I've been writing songs since I was like 10 years old and playing guitar and stuff. So I know I could do it, but I was like, you know, let me do my version of this. And I also watched a documentary called The Adventures of Betty Blowtorch, which is about a band called Betty Blowtorch and all the stuff that they got into. And then another documentary called The Gits, which is a band from, I believe, Seattle from the early 90s. So those documentaries really kind of influenced me to start this band.
So were you into punk before that, or were you just were you inspired by like these movies?
Well, I was into Riot Girl in high school. I liked like Bikini Kill and Babes in Toyland and 7 Year Bitch and The Gits and things like that. So I did have a period where I was very influenced by these like, you know, girl bands from yesteryear. But once I was out of high school is when I listened to more folk music, like Annie DeFranco or, you know, things like that. So I forgot about that world, right? And then when I decided to start a punk band, I got into the Germs that were an LA band. The original punk band of like the 70s, you know, from LA, the Germs, and they just blew me away. And we covered a few of the Germ songs, and I was like, this is what I want. This is what I want to sound like, the Germs.
You said you started writing songs and playing guitar since you were 10 years old. Is that a family thing that your family's into music?
No, not at all. Not at all. When I have friends who their parents are musicians and singers, and they would like sing Christmas carols around the piano and stuff like that, but not my family, not at all. No one in my family was a musician or
Were
a
they
singer.
supportive? Did they help you get into that? Or
No, not really. It's weird because funny story, and it's kind of off the subject, but when I started Trap Girl and I started getting little interviews and things like that, and I'm very close with my mom. I was very, very close with her when she was living, and when I first started getting this attention for interviews and stuff, I told her, Mom, what do you want me to say if they ask about you and my dad? And she said, tell them you're an orphan.
Whoa.
Wow.
But it was like fun. That's like her sense of humor.
Yeah.
Like that was literally her sense of humor. I had a friend who, this is another off topic, but I had a friend who was shot in the mouth. Okay, this is years ago. I was like 20, in my early 20s. And I was like devastated for her. And I said, Mom, because I was very close to my mom. And I said, Mom, my friend was shot in the mouth, but she's okay. And I'm going to visit her in the hospital. She said, good. Just don't buy her any hard candy. What kind of thing? I was shocked, but that was her kind of sense of humor. Anyways, so just wanted to talk about that real quickly. But yes, no. So back to your question, no, we didn't have anyone who played an instrument or who sang or who wrote songs. No one. So the television and films and things were really what got me into it. Was really what pushed me towards that, was the films and just the love of music to begin with. I loved it. I mean, of course, my parents played music in the house and they loved it. But
you kind of revere music.
Right.
What do they want for you? Like, what do they see you doing outside of being like this crazy punk musician?
Well, the thing is, my dad, now that I still do this and talk to him, sometimes I'll chime in him what's going on with the band and stuff. And anytime it's something big for me, like, Dad, I met Henry Rollins and I have his email. And then my dad would say, Did you get money for it? Are you getting paid for that? And I'm like, no, but it's like a big deal. And he's like, that's not.
Such a dad.
Yeah, it's such a dad move.
That reminds me of when me and Dominic started to grow with our last podcast. We would do like meet and greets where someone we potentially wanted to work with on a future project, the first step is just to meet them and hang out and get to know each other. And that was an unusual thing to explain to our dad because he's like a warehouse guy, he's a 9-to-5, like, so he's like, is it a show? It's like, no. So you're just going and hanging out with this person? And I'm like, well, we're not hanging. It's a business meeting. So what are you going to be doing? I mean, probably like smoke weed and eat snacks, but
Yeah, that's true.
That's how business is done.
Yeah, sure. Maybe there's alcohol at the golf course, but this is how we do it.
Tinseltown.
I remember, I think the first time I saw you was for one of the Chicos Rockeras fundraisers that Alice Back put together. And I remember seeing you being like, it's a lot of energy. You're rolling around on stage. You're in the crowd. You're doing a lot of big moves. Were you always this like into this like pageantry, like this like big performance moves?
Well, I just always wanted to, I've always wanted to be a band and be a singer that I would want to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Before I had a band, and Trap Girl's my only band I ever formed.
Oh, wow.
So before I had a band, I would go to shows, and my friend would say, oh, you got to watch this band. They're insane. And then we would get there, and the singer would be in a T-shirt and jeans and have his back to us and just stand there. And I thought, this is what I came here for, to not be entertained, to not feel something, to look at this guy's back, and I just thought, this is, if I ever had a band, this would never do something like that,
Yeah, it's always been something weird. I think that, especially if you're somebody that's playing like a high energy style of music, like metal or punk or hardcore, anything that like is meant as I feel like more community, because like you can have people like shoegaze or like the Pixies were notorious for like everybody stands still and they just play the music, but that to be able to do that and like still be considered like a good performance, I feel like is very few and far between. Like the Distillers are like that, where like Brody just kind of just plays the music. There's very little interaction in between songs. But yeah, there is something about like, yeah, you want to feel, I think that for me growing up, like being into punk when I was in high school and going to shows, out of high school as a younger adult, like that's what is fun about that community and about those shows is like the crowd surrounding the singer crowd surfing, like yelling with everybody, a lot of interaction, feeling you're part of a community versus like there's some type of like weird barrier.
Yeah, madness. I like chaos. I like madness when it comes to my performers. Like Betty Blowtorch. Divine, crazy. Just wild.
What influences your songwriting?
Personal experience. So if I haven't gone through it, I probably won't write about it. We have a new EP we just recorded 2 weeks ago. It's called Divas, Inferno. And it's literally my first time writing songs. These songs on this new EP are fuck you to everyone. Not just men. Like this, anyone can get it. I'm talking children, grandmothers, grandfathers. It's an equal opportunist type of hate on this EP where, for a long time, we wrote a lot of songs just, dead men don't rape and bite me, things like that towards men and hating men and the same kind of, we're just, but now, like I said, it's the first time where anyone can get it.
Is this, tell me if I'm off base, but is this a response to the change in the climate?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's things that I personally went through with people, with girlfriends, with friends, with other bands, with family members. Like these are things that I went through, and it just so happened that it was with the people that I least expected. That we had either a falling out or I felt some type of way and I have to write about it, and the climate sucks where we're at right now. And, the government wants to control our bodies and things like that. But, I have to meet my muse where it's at, and have to like tap into that and write from my personal experience. It's all personal experience.
It sounds like what you're putting out now is probably like your earlier work, I think, does come from a personal place, like your own experience, but it is more like outwardly, like kind of more, how do I say, like broad, like talking about societal things. Yeah. And so it sounds like this is a lot more actual, personal, introspective.
It is
stuff
personal,
that you're really dealing with.
Yeah, and I feel like everything I've written has been personal. Everything, even if it's more of a feminist view or against the government or whatever, or political. There's always parts of it that is very personal. If you look into the lyrics, into the words, like they're very personal. Whether it's like a shout tune for a crowd or just like for myself, like it's personal. Yeah.
What is there anything about this album this EP that's coming out that you can tell us about?
Yeah, the title track. So the album is called Divas Inferno, and the first track off the record is called Divas Inferno. And my drummer, George, who couldn't be here, he just got married. So I usually do little intros and outros and try to be, cute and arty that way and fun. Because that's what I like in my music. I like a lot of intros, outros, skits, things like that, So I had her, because she has a very high-pitched, very femme voice. I had her do the intro of Divas Inferno, and she says, I'm paraphrasing here because I can't remember exactly what she says that we wrote, but something like, you never know who you're getting in a fight with in this industry. You just never know. And then I go on. Then my voice comes on top of hers and says, "Shut the fuck up." So it's like a very serious, you have to be very careful in this industry. You never know who you are fighting with. And then just me kind of just slamming down with those thick vocals, shut up, So I do like that song a lot. It's very angry. It's very, very us.
I was curious because you mentioned that before this you did more folk music. Did anything translate? Would you say your subject matter has changed as the genre changed? As your genre of choice changed? Or do you think you were talking about similar things with folklore? What inspired you before and now?
I like that you say folklore. Folklore. Well, in folk music, I wrote mostly love songs and, unrequited love and, whatever, hating men still. But they were good songs. But I think if you listen to Trap Girl and you listen to the folk stuff, which you still can online, one thing is consistent, and that's they're catchy songs.
Right.
There's hooks. So I've always followed the structure of a catchy song, where are the hooks?
Right.
Because I don't like that abstract shit. I don't like the fucking howling for 6 minutes. I don't do that. I write good songs with good hooks, and you can hear that in both those genres of the music that I've made.
What comes first for you, the song's point or the actual song?
I think the title.
The title.
I think the title would come first. If it's a fun title,
right, then
I'll work off of that. Or the hook itself will come to me. I'm trying to think of the other song. One song, so we had 3 songs that were, so we recorded a full album, 14 songs. And then we wanted to get some that didn't make the album to make this EP, right? So we only had 3, so I wrote one in one day, right? In 25 minutes, I wrote one. The next day, we recorded it, right? Wow. So I called it No Reason for Living, right? Because I had seen that on YouTube from some other singer who wrote a song, No Reason for Living, and I'm like, wow, I really love that title. I'm going to take it, but make it my own, right? So I just went off of that, she's got no reason for living, she's got no reason for living. So it that's the first thing that came to mind. And then I just so basically the song is about, I will fight you. I will go to jail for it.
Right.
Because I have no reason for living. You know what I mean? I don't care. You want to fight? I want to fight. So basically that's what it's a challenging song. It's challenging somebody. So I took that and turned it to that. So, I think the titles are fun or cute. I'll go with that.
It sounds like, maybe I'm reading into this too much, but it sounds like you trust yourself a lot.
Now I do.
Yeah.
Now I do, because we've cut so many records.
Yeah.
So many songs. We recorded so many songs in the past 2 years. Not only Trap Girl, I also sing for, I'm one of the singers for a band called Commando. So we're also currently writing a new album for Commando. So that's all I've been doing. That's been my full-time job right now, is writing songs.
Yeah.
Which is, I never in a million years thought that would be the case, because I've been a social worker for 5 years, but now that I'm in between jobs, literally my only job is writing songs.
Mm-hmm.
What's your? I didn't know about that. What's your experience as a social worker like? Having to go back and forth from both worlds, like
it's very hard, and it's not fun. Social work is very stressful, very thankless, and it's a very hard job. So I don't think people realize that.
Well, as someone who's had social workers, thank you.
Yeah.
Seriously, like
Yeah. Well,
That reminded me because I did have a social worker before, and I felt so bad for her because her name, I think she was either from, I don't remember where she's from. I think it was Singapore, but her last name was spelled Biche. And so it was like, I felt bad because I think she would get frustrated, and when people got mad at her, they would, could easily make a joke out of her name.
I have a funny social work story. It's not really that funny, but kind of funny. I don't know if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was. This is about 2 years ago when I was doing social work for a convalescent hospital, and everyone knew I was trans in my building, obviously. But I'm not as flashy as I am right now. Obviously, when you go to work, you just want to be comfortable. So, hair's in a bun, collar shirt. I'm just doing my thing. So a few coworkers come to me and say, very excited, right? Oh my God, our new client is trans. You have to take her. You have to you have to take her case. I'm like, well, what's her deal? And they're like, well, she's, an elderly woman. I was like, oh, a trans elder. I feel so connected, so much love. So I went to go see her, and I met with her, and I said, hi, I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm Drew. I'm your caseworker. And she looked me up and down and said, give me cigarettes. And I said, I can get you cigarettes, but, let's talk. I want to put a plan together for you. I want to help you. And so we talked for a minute, and she was not very nice to me at all. I got her cigarettes, and maybe a day later, I was in my office, and she came to see me, right? Because we were in a convalescent hospital, so my offices were in the same area as convalescent. So she walked over to my office, banged on my door. I opened it. I looked at her, and she said, more cigarettes. And I said, listen, I will talk to you later. We're going to have to call your niece or whoever you have in another state for money because I can't continue buying you cigarettes. And then a nurse walked by and saw us interacting and grabbed her and said, come on, let's go back to your room. And she said to the nurse, leave me alone. I'm talking to him. So she misgendered me and totally offended me. And I'm like, you're a piece of shit like everyone else. Whatever. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny.
That's wild. I
wanted to connect with her and I wanted to help her, but she didn't give a shit. So whatever.
I mean, damn.
I thought it would be funnier. It's a little somber in here, but I think it's fun. It's funny. Okay, I was misgendered by a trans person at my job.
I mean, I do see the irony in it. It is funny to have that wanting, especially when it's kind of like Ryan has stories about how Ryan has autism, so Ryan is autistic. I have to do both because people identity first.
I am diagnosis first. That's how I prefer. So it's okay if he refers to me like that. That's my choice. Shut up.
Anyway, so, but the same thing. It's it's kind of like when white people are you're the only white person, then another Mexican comes in and they're like, you guys gotta fucking meet. I feel like a lot of that when people don't understand, they just assume oh, you guys have everything in common because you're the one thing that you have different than us. You guys.
Yeah, and that's how it really. Sorry, that's how it really was. The girls at work were kind of wow, you're that, she's that, and y'all can get to know each other and be friends and I too was excited about that. I was like, oh my goodness, I can help a trans elder. This is the little perks of this job.
Especially being in a social work environment. I do understand the mentality of that of oh, you can actually kind of empathize and like relate to their experience. And so like I do see the benefit or like the mindset of like, oh, you should help her because she's not going to get the same consideration from other people.
Yes, totally. And I was down with that, but I didn't know it was going to go south so quick. You know what I mean? I didn't know that.
She's like, let me give you a bit of taste of what I went through.
Right. Right. Well, she's probably dead now.
Just smoke on out for.
No.
You can share as much like or as little as you want about it. I don't know if you're comfortable talking a little bit about like your journey with transition and how it feeds into your current like your music and what your history is with that.
I'm just trying to find a way how to say it where it sounds interesting. Because it's not very interesting. It's boring. It's a boring story, you know, when it comes to things like that.
Personally, I think that it might be like beneficial to hear a boring story about it because I feel like so much pressure can be put on people to like make their stories like interesting, but not to speak for you, but the general idea is that like, you know, trans people are people, like their lives are not that much different from cis people. Like
You still gotta eat lunch and dinner every day.
Right.
Most of life is boring.
It's funny because there's a lot of, you know, it's funny. There's a lot of trans people and trans people know this, right? They know that there's an interest there. So there's a lot of trans people that I follow on TikTok who are not musicians, are not comedians, are not writers, are not nothing but trans. And they have like 100,000 followers because they do a day in the life of a trans. And they literally just like, today I woke up, I got the mail, I got my breakfast, got ready, went to the bus stop, and I'm just like, you motherfucker have 100,000 followers. I could sell so much fucking CDs and stuff if I had those many fucking followers, and you're just eating breakfast? But there's a lot of people like that on TikTok that I follow, and I'm one of them who was watching them, you know. But they're the ones who do want to share, you know. They're the ones that go out of their way and say, "This is what I do every day. This is who I am," and this is. So they'll have other videos of, you know, when I came out, you know, and another video of like my first procedure, you know, like. So there are these people out there who can talk about this all day long, you know? And there's people like me who I think it's bullshit, right? Where I'm like, I feel like I've talked about it so much in the past where I'm like, here we go again, you know? But I understand what you're saying. I understand people asking questions and wondering things like that. But like you said, you know, we just normal upbringing. That's how I kind of had it. There was no words for it when you're growing up, right? You just kind of see what you see on television. You know, I'm from the 90s. I'm pretty sure y'all are from the 90s too. And it was very negative trans portrayals in films and shows. So that already kind of puts your mind in that kind of realm of like, oh, I can't say anything, I can't do anything, because you know I remember watching Ace Ventura, and being like, wow, I rather die than be a trans person because this is scary.
That's
right?
wild because like you know, being a cis person, like watching that, like I never even considered, you know, the correlation to that. But it is like this thing that is, I feel like, is kind of just deeply embedded in like at the time society. It was just accepted of like, these are people that it's okay to like
make fun of,
to villainize and to make fun of.
Yeah, so it's not a happy time for young trans people in the 90s. It wasn't, right? So, you know, I can think of that. I could think of another movie because I remember I liked films and I had HBO 1 and 2 when I was a child. So, so we had
the unison. It was the harmony. It was like,
you know, you were cool if you had both of them.
That's
HBO
wild.
1 and 2. Yeah. So I remember also another film called Soap Dish, I think it was called.
I know I've heard that name being thrown around, but it comes up a lot, but I've never seen it.
The villain in that film, who I thought was beautiful, I think her name is Catherine. She's from Raging Bull. I don't know if you can look that up, producer. She's from Casper. She's from Raging Bull, and she's beautiful.
I was like,
it can't be Christina Ricci.
No. That's what I'm telling you, because she's like the villain. She's a character actress in these films.
Can't remember her name, but I know who you're talking
She's
about.
beautiful. She has blonde, like really, really
And
blonde hair.
That's also the thing. Like part of these movies, like villainized the most beautiful trans woman.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting.
So she in Soap Dish is the villain, and I was obsessed with her. I was probably like 6 years old watching this, and I thought she's so pretty, and I love her. And at the end of the film,
Kathy Moriarty?
yeah, something like that.
Moriarty?
Yeah, she plays Montana Moorhead.
Yeah. So
It's so crazy that her last name is Moriarty.
I don't know how to say that.
That's a famous villain's name. It's
Oh,
a
okay.
Sherlock Holmes villain.
yeah.
okay, so she at the end of the film, they expose her as being born a man. And I just thought, and I remember as a kid, I was like, oh, okay, so she's like even worse.
Right.
Because she was bad to begin with. She was a villain in the film. Y'all didn't have to expose her as trans. She's still bad.
Yeah, like that's an unnecessary.
She's still
detail.
bad, but they're like, let's make it worse. She has a dick.
Like
And,
the
like-
idea that like there has to be a reason why a woman is bad.
Yeah.
Like she's really bad. She's really, really bad.
Yeah, I forget where I heard it from, but there's a lot of conversation in movies in general, but specifically in horror movies where like sort of like feminizing the villain is a consistent thing. And it's particularly prevalent in horror movies like Silence of the Lambs or like Sleepaway Camp, but it does show up in other, like, even if they're not specifically like trans, they will be like a more effeminate, more queer presenting character. Like, what is it? Not Casino Royale, but it's one of the Bond films.
With is it Spectre?
I think it's Spectre.
The one with Javier Bardem.
Javier Bardem, or like the most recent Fast and the Furious movie. A lot of people commented on their scenes where he's like flamboyant and it's supposed to be entertaining, but it's like it's consistently a thing that they continue to add to films. Or like Watchmen, how he like comes out as a gay man in the film, like right before you realize he's the villain. I mean, not right before, but it's a consistent thing in the story arc. Like they're correlating the idea of being in the queer community in general and being like secretly evil.
Yeah.
Can I ask? Because you said you were very close with your mom, and you know our listeners are Latino. Like, what was? There's still a lot of like anti-queer, rhetoric like that. Like people are anti-queer in the Latino community. We're very conservative. Like, were you accepted in your transition by your family, by your parents, or was that like a journey as well?
I think it's a journey, and it's I'm still on that journey because there's no real end date. There's not a book on this, and there's not a date where you say you turn 30. Oh, it's over now.
Yeah.
Everyone accepts you. You're she, her to everyone, and your life is going to get better. So there's moments that you do feel that where like, wow, this is very gender affirming. Thank you for that. I can move on with my day. But then there's moments where they're not so gender affirming. So it's a continuous journey within your own family. And it might not always be fun. It kind of sucks sometimes. So I guess the answer to your question is, was I fully accepted? No. Is it a journey with me and people that my immediate family? Yes. And that's just the reality of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something I've talked about recently about like the older generation, at least in our community, like beyond just queer identity is not allowing the younger generation to have whatever they have or allowed to have now because they didn't have it. Right. And it's interesting because your freedom like makes them realize their limitations and their pain. And it hurts you, but it's about their pain and their limitations that they've held on to. And it's frustrating. And I understand it's painful, but it's also hard to like eventually see their pain in all of this because they can't give you what they can't give themselves. Right. And it sucks, but in some ways it makes you start to have sympathy for. Does that feel like you eventually start to have some sympathy for them too?
I want to say, I would like to say yes, but I don't, because there's a such thing as, there's something called unconditional love, right? Mm-hmm. What trans people experience most of the time is conditioned love, right? I love you under these conditions. If you're my son, if you're my brother, if you're the name you used to be, I love you under these conditions. Now, the woman who's here now, I don't love her, right? So it's conditioned love, and you learn that right away. So I don't have conditioned love for people. I have unconditional love for certain people. I don't know what it's like to have conditioned love. So that's why I don't feel sympathy like for them. Like, I don't give them a break for that.
Yeah.
Right. So,
yeah, I feel like, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I do think, to what Ricky is saying, I do think that like there's kind of a difference in, like, I could understand what they did or didn't get in their lifetime and in their upbringing and their history, and I can relate to them, and that they had their own traumas and they had their own struggles, but that doesn't mean that I need to cut them a break, because that stuff, while I can understand where it comes from and it might give me peace of mind of like, it might grant me the ability to move forward with my own life and to not hold on to like hatred for them. It doesn't mean that I need to sympathize or empathize with them, because that kind of in turn like empowers their conditional love of like, because we've heard it before, like my parents or older people in my family, there are, when discussions of queerness get brought up, there's a lot of, everybody has heard it. Well, it wasn't like this when we grew up. We were brought up differently. Things were different when we were growing up. It's hard for me to get it. It's hard for me to understand. And it's like,
I just don't like it.
Or I just don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people say it with their chest, huh?
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing, because at least you could be like, okay, I don't need, not that you need to try with anybody, because you don't owe anyone any of that, but the whole thing of like, I just don't like it, then it's like, all right, peace. But like with the people, especially like with my own family, it's like the whole, I guess just answering that or like responding to that of like, it's just hard for me, and then doubling down on being unaccepting because it's hard for you is like, that's not an excuse. I'm, again, not speaking for you, but queer people, trans people, they're living it. They're living with the hardship of it. It's hard for you to understand, but you're not really being oppressed. You might be called out. You might like, people might shame you, but like, you're not being like oppressed for not understanding.
There's no laws against you.
Right.
You're not risking your life just walking on the street.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Like it can be dangerous for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, what's frustrating about that concept is like, what people have a hard time understanding is our understanding of these things has changed, but the actual concepts themselves have always existed. Like, there have always been queer people, there have always been trans people, there have always been autistic people. They've always existed. You just had a different name for them, or you had a different way of dealing with them. Like, I hear it, not to bring it back to us, but I hear it a lot from older Latinos where they're like, we just called it weird. I'm like, yeah, now you know what to actually call it.
Yeah.
So educate yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
These things aren't new. We just know a lot more about them.
Yeah, you can name every model of every 1950s car that's ever existed, but you can't learn these new terms.
If anything, you might be. That sounds like an autistic thing.
There is a funny little sketch on SNL where they were like having a Thanksgiving dinner, and the grandparents said, the grandpa goes, in the airport we saw two transgenders, and the granddaughter says, "Grandpa, you don't talk like that anymore." And he goes, "Well, I never saw them when I was young. They didn't exist in the 50s." And then the granddaughter goes, "They did. They just hid their whole lives, then killed themselves." And it's true.
Yeah.
They were always there. Trans people have always been here, and they just kind of lived their lives and never coming out, and either lived this horrible long life and then died and were strong enough to live until they were old and died, or they killed themselves, because I don't know where I would be if you said, well, you just can't do it. You just can't do what you want to do. It's 1953. You can't do it. You know what I mean? Like, This is your wife now. This is, go have kids, You're not going to do anything that you want to do. Okay. Maybe there is like a 1%, because I'm really into like trans history and things like that and entertainers from that time. And it's rare, there's some, but very, very rare. Even that didn't even come out as trans until they died. Right. So, I would probably be that all the other percentage, right, of the people who are like, you just can't, I would be in like Guatemala or something, right, in the farm, right, and that wouldn't even cross my mind to gender express or to any of those things, right, from where we came from, right, it would just unheard of, especially, so.
But that's like the interesting thing because if you dig deep enough, there are, as scarce and limiting as they are because of the overall history of it, there are examples of like these things popping up even further in history. Like, I can't remember her name, and if we can look it up, that'd be awesome. His name. There was in the Mexican War, there was a general who was born a woman who identified as a man. And I think the story was that they did that to join the army, but they maintained that identity until they died.
I believe they also got married.
Yeah, they got married and they were like, they were a man for the rest of their life because that's who they like were.
Emilio Robles Avila.
Got a boom.
Yeah, they were a trans man, but that's beyond rare, right?
Well,
Like,
for sure.
But it's also like looking back into like culturally, like before, this goes far back to like the days of like being conquered. but like original indigenous people not only didn't acknowledge these things as separate, like limited identities, but they embraced them. They like celebrated them. They weren't afraid of this concept.
You're talking about like two spirits.
Yeah, like two spirits, and they also just like didn't care about gender in that way, and so they were accepting of people who identified as something different than they were born with.
I also think, to your point, like it was very rare, but the fact that it did exist is like it's evidence of like this is a lot.
Yeah.
The people that say it's unnatural or it's whatever, it's like this goes back way further than any like as long as history has been recorded, there are accounts of gender nonconforming people. So it's like just the fact that you have somebody from hundreds or 1,000 years ago or whatever, as long as we could record it, is like these stories are popping up. That tells you something that
all these communities have always been here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I suspect a few, I'm not going to call anybody out, but I suspect a few people in the entertainment industry and beyond throughout history that might have been trans.
Yeah.
A few, real popular ones.
I feel like you're going to be like, Abe Lincoln.
I mean, look at The Matrix, the directors of The Matrix.
Right.
yeah.
Out of nowhere, they're like, hi, we're trans women, but they've always been trans women, right? So one of the most popular fucking huge films, franchises.
Right.
And it was made by two trans ladies.
That was another thing that I wanted to comment on. Again, I can't speak from that specific community. I speak mostly from the ones that I'm in. But it is a similar concept in the autism community where like people have this idea of like an epiphany moment and at least speaking from my own experience, what I can tell is like that's mostly for the people around the person that's transitioning or discovering about themselves or revealing something about themselves. That person's always been like that. And so a part of them, like there might be a phase where they're kind of undoing the restrictions they put on themselves when they were like hiding. When they, for autistic people, it's masking. But that's still always who they were on the inside, regardless of if anybody knew about it. That's who they always were gonna be.
It's funny. I actually dated somebody who was autistic, and they said they were autistic. I don't know if it's true, but they were just they were like they would say the most inappropriate things like in bed. And I was like
really hard to do that in bed.
And I was like,
was it like? Have you seen the trains?
It was just weird.
Talking about their hobbies. Sorry, go ahead.
It was just weird. Like it was a lot of sounds. Like he'll like whistle, like do like a roo, like a word. Like
You
doing
really
it.
did like trains.
No, not that kind of whistle, but like when you do like that.
Oh, yeah. I can't do that.
Like during sex, and I thought, is that why he says he's autistic? Because of his weird noises. I don't know, but I never found out what made him autistic. I guess.
I mean, if we want to go into,
I don't know.
That's also that's also a common thing. The biggest thing that I've noticed about people who aren't like part of the overall autistic community is literally just a misunderstanding of what autism is. The most basic way that I could explain it for anybody who is trying to be aware and understand is. Autism is a disorder and phenomenon in the brain that essentially affects the brain's ability to absorb and then process information. Like, I like to use the joke that it's like how regular people learn is monkey see, monkey does. With autistic people, it's like monkey see, monkey wonders why everyone does that. It's like a thing of like, they don't, another way of is like, your brain absorbs information and then decides which information is important. Autistic people's brains don't know how to do that. They have to essentially teach themselves what is important and what isn't. And that's why you get things like overstimulation or like stimming activity, or like when they ramble about information that they've retained. It's because they don't know how to tell what's important and what isn't.
You started taking off and like opportunities started coming to Trap Girl pretty quickly. For the people that don't know, you were working a lot with Alice Bag. Can you explain like who Alice Bag is and like what that experience was like?
Yeah, Alice Bag is a friend of mine, and she was one of the first punks in LA to make music, first Latina punk. She really is the queen of punk, and started making punk music in the late 70s with all the other legends from that time, and we're close. And
were you friends with? I mean, were you a fan of her from like earlier?
I was, yeah. I watched the decline of Western civilization. Is that what it's called? Well, they just called The Decline. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Because that's about like metal, right? But there's
part one is about punk.
Oh, I didn't see the punk one. I only saw the
Alice
metal one.
is in it.
Oh shit! I got to check that out because I've seen the metal one. I didn't see the punk one.
But they don't interview her. She doesn't get to talk.
Oh, so they just like say like
she performs and it's great. And
I thought it was like she sits there while they talk about her.
Well, they do. There are like documentaries because I used to watch. That's kind of how I got into punk was like documentaries like An Attitude and Decline of Western Civilization, and there was one other one, Punk 101. But they do that a lot where they'll talk about like underground or bands that never made it, bands that aren't popular, like cult following bands of like, these are the best undiscovered punk bands. And then they don't interview any, they'll just show footage and they don't interview the people in the band.
That's kind of how it was. She performed and it was great. And I remember watching that on the VHS when I was in high school and then meeting her. I met her through Chicas Rockeras when my band performed for Chicas Rockeras. She was an instructor that year, and I met her, and she's just she's great. I love her so much. So
you've been, because you Trap Girl and you all have like collaborated, right? Like you've put on like shows and like a festival together, if I'm not mistaken, or it might
not
be?
with Alice Bag, but I used to do Transgress Fest, which is a festival in LA and in Orange County. I haven't done it in a few years. The last one was in 2020. But that's, and I put all my whole energy into it. That's probably what kept Trap Girl going at the kind of pace it was, because I wish I could have, and looking back now, I wish I could have put that time more in making the recordings and recording sessions, things like that, because I put that on hold in order to do the festival for every single year. But yeah, no, I did that on my own, but we did do Turn It Up together, which is like a group that she put together that was trying to amplify women's voices in music, like more women producers, more women radio DJs, more women on festivals. Like that was the whole thing behind Turn It Up. And that was with Alice Bag. That was with Allison Wolf, who's from Bratmobile. My other friend Sovi Soul, who's a singer, and a couple other people. Can't think of all the names right now, but yeah, we would get together and kind of talk about this and what kind of moves we're going to make to do that. So we haven't done that in a few years because of the pandemic. Kind of stopped that as well.
Were you an instructor for Chicas Rockeras, or?
I did do a few workshops for them, like songwriting workshops, for like 2 years in a row, which are really cool. But I will be joining them this year for the entire week.
And can you talk about what that is for people that don't know?
Yeah, Chicas Rockeras is like girls rock camp in Southeast LA, where they'll take girls and gender expansive youth from the ages of 7 to about 17. And in 1 week, they learn an instrument, they form a band, and at the end of the camp, they will play a showcase. So it's really fun. That's a few times I done songwriting workshops there. We had a blast.
What was like a favorite? Do you have a favorite moment or like a favorite song that one of the students came up with?
No, because I was instructing. I was doing a workshop on songwriting. So what I did was write a song for that workshop with them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I basically I threw out some kind of suggestions, like, what do you guys want to write about, skateboards or whatever, and then kind of put words to it and show them how easy it is to write a song, is what we did.
What are your plans right now? You guys just finished your EP. What are the plans that Trap Girl has in store?
Well, we have a show coming. When is this going to come out?
This is going to come out this Wednesday on is it the 1st or the 2nd? I think it's the 1st. This Wednesday.
Okay. So we do have some fun shows coming up. We're playing here in Los Angeles at the Zebulon June 28th with, I can't say the band's name, it's a secret, but they're calling themselves Girl Germs, and it's like it's an original 90s riot girl band reunion, but we can't say the name.
Got it.
But it's a big show.
It's a big show. And then but it's hard to sell it out because you're not saying the band's name. Anyways, whatever. And then 2 days after that, we're actually playing a show with John Waters, which is pretty crazy.
Awesome.
That's bragging rights.
For sure.
So it's Trap Girl, John Waters, and Gravy Train.
Oh, snap.
And it's June 30th in Oakland.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's sold out. So those are fun things. And then we have a full-length album that we don't know when will come out, but we have it in the can. So yeah, and it's called The Savage Goddess. So we're going to work on that too. But it's done. It's in the can. That's a industry term for being done. What I wanted to do was on my IG, I was gonna put like, hey, you got any questions? I'm going on a podcast, because I've done that before. But they're always like really bad sexual questions. They're always sexual questions, like gross questions. So I didn't get time to do it, but I'm pretty sure I would have had some whoppers.
What are some questions you've answered in the past, or people have asked in the past?
Let's see. If I really do cocaine. Trap Girl had a button made that said, I did coke with Trap Girl, with a little lip mark. So it's kind of always stayed with us. But let's see. What other questions have I been asked? A lot of just really crazy things. Like I had an old band member like disguise themselves and say, "What do you think of your old bass player? Was she a bitch?" So I've had that too, and I'm just like, this seems kind of fishy. But
what was your answer?
I said, yeah, they're all fucking bitches. All my old bass players, all my old guitar players, and everyone who's been in this band, y'all fucking bitches. Because I knew it was somebody from my band. So I was like, yeah, they're all bitches. They don't even got names. They're just bitches.
You have any like road stories? Anything crazy happen like at show while on tour, or just like?
I mean, well, I do. And it's funny because I've learned that what I think is kind of funny when I tell like other trans people and we'll laugh together, it's not funny for like non-trans people. But I think it's funny. But people are like, oh my God. Oh, are you okay? But I think it's funny.
People that share the same trauma laugh at the same stuff.
Right,
But people
right.
outside of that trauma do
Yeah,
not laugh.
so I did. This is not funny, but I'm going to say it because I don't care. We played a show. This is in the early days. We played a backyard show. And those backyard shows, they get wild.
Right.
To get out of the backyard, you need to walk through the home. But this is like the show's almost over. People are leaving. It's kind of like a punky house. And I walked by this guy, overweight guy, white, dirty white muscle shirt, glasses.
Well, not muscles on him, but
no muscles on him. Muscle shirt, glasses, in front of a pan on the stove, cutting cocaine on a pan, right?
right.
And I walked by, and I didn't have money back then. I couldn't afford my own drugs, so I was like, "Oh, can I have a line?" And he's like, "Give me money first." So I was like, "I have $1. Can I give you $1 for a line?" and he like looked around, and he like got real close to me, and he's like, "I want tranny dick." And I was like, I gotta go. It was bad. It's not funny, but I think it's funny looking back now, like this greasy fucking asshole. What was I gonna do in that moment? He doesn't want $1 for a line of cocaine. He wants tranny dick for a line of cocaine. Okay. What am I gonna do in that moment?
I feel like if he's asking for dick, like you win in both situations, kind of. I mean,
I do. But in that, I don't even know. I'm just walking by this greasy stranger in front of a fucking pan with lines of cocaine on it in a backyard.
You're like,
in some stranger's house. Like, okay, yeah, here you go. Open
like,
up.
yeah.
Open up. Here I come.
you're like, yeah, a line for a line.
Yeah.
Equivalent exchange.
I just think like, what was I supposed to do in that moment? Okay, you got it. All for you, bud. That one line. You got me.
yeah, that's. I mean, that is a lot of labor. I mean, how long are you working for? By the time you're done, is the line even worth it?
Right. And it's not even me the one who's working, right? I'm gonna be hanging out. But I need like a candle. I need a candle. I need to like be relaxed. I need like a nice sofa. I doubt I was gonna get that in
I feel like
a punk house.
I feel like there was an opportunity to like trick him, like say yes and then let him. Either you are able to do the line and then just leave, Or like because it's a stove it's a pan on a stove. Like he's gonna take it with him to make sure?
Right.
I don't think so.
Well, the story doesn't end there. So the story doesn't end there. Real quickly, I left this part out, but I ignored that offer, and I just kept it moving. Right. But then
Never
I was
accept the first offer.
Right. I was outside packing things up by myself, and then my guitar player Steve was like down the street pushing the amp, and that man pops up again, and he has his phone and goes, hands me the phone kind of like this. Where is it? Like this. And goes, put your number in there.
Smooth.
Put your number in there.
He's got the Riz, huh?
He's like,
shake.
and I'm like, I gotta go. I was like, Steve. I'm like running to my guitar player. Like, what were you? These really? Oh yes. Okay. Here you go. Call me, please. Text me.
You wouldn't even give your coke up. I'm gonna give you my
hello.
number.
Like that guy's overestimating either the quality of the cocaine or the quality of his person. Like,
Oh my god, I was in disbelief. I was like, what if I don't give my number? What if I say no? Like, what's gonna happen? You know what I mean? So I was like, let me get out of here. Thankfully, my guitar player like saved me. But I think that's a funny story looking back.
to give
I also have another story. I stage dived into nothing.
Oh no!
So that was fun.
Oh, yeah.
That was also in the early days. That was also the early days where it was like a crowd in front of me. I was like the stage was like here,
right?
maybe a little more, and it was at Perez Tire Shop. Do you remember that place?
I don't know that.
It was a tire shop that threw punk shows, and it was like the early days, and there was a crowd in front of me, and I was like feeling it, and I was like, "Wah!" And I threw myself, and everyone just, and I landed on my knee, and I swear to you, I've never felt that before. I landed on my knee, and I literally felt electricity through my whole body.
Oh, no.
I felt it right now. You talking about it?
Yeah. Is that normal? Is that supposed to happen? I don't know.
I mean, you probably
when you
landed
land
on
the
a
cap,
nerve.
it hits the tendons and nerves, and it literally sends shocks to your.
I literally felt it was like, zzz.
Yeah.
And then I got up, and then I couldn't bend the knee, so I was like walking, just like moving it, thinking, "Oh God, I hope it's not broken," like my kneecap.
Oof.
And thankfully, it was fine. But I can't do that now. What else? I've mixed my cocaine in my compact.
That's really funny.
Trying to smuggle it, and
That's
then
so
I have
funny.
to.
I've
just-
seen people, or I've heard of people doing.
So
it.
we were driving to Las Vegas, right? And I see a cop car behind us, and I'm drunk, and I've done a lot of cocaine, and I still have cocaine left over. And I don't know what to do, so I poured it into my powder compact. And it mixed with the powder.
I was gonna ask.
So we got back to the hotel room, and you know when you've been partying most of the night, you want to keep partying. So we did all the compact powder.
You took powdering your nose way too literally.
We literally did whatever was in whatever was in that little baggie that went into the powder. We did it.
When someone said, "Was that cut with?" Did you say maybe it's Maybelline?
That was a way better joke than I had.
Well, I only use Mac. Okay, I only use Mac. Everything. So
Now it's smack.
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for doing it. This was a lot of fun. I'm excited for your new EP. Is there anything else you want to plug? You have some dates. You have your EP.
We got everything in there.
All right.
Dwight.
Well, we'll include any links that you want for promotional stuff. Definitely, if you're listening, if you're into punk, even if you're not, check out Trap Girl. Really great, a lot of fun.
We bring the hooks.
Hell yeah.
Right.
Oh, I didn't say my sleepaway camp comment. So I did an interview on Zoom, and the lady said, "What would you?" And I know I'm re-saying it again, but this is that was for a magazine. This is for this. But she was like, if someone were to say, how can you describe Trap Girl? And I said, the mamas and papas at sleepaway camp. I thought that was funny. You know, that's like the mom. Yeah, or Fleetwood Mac at sleepaway camp. One or the other.
I think people understand that one.
Yeah.
And if you don't get the reference,
Watch the movie.
watch the movie.
You nerd. Anyway, thank you for joining us. If you've made it this far, first of all, you're my hero. And secondly, let us know in the comments what's an obvious thing you had to explain to your Latino parents. And from us, Arun, Poquito, don't fly.